I created the separate component, A, of course, to practice creating your own components, but B also because it really is the core philosophy of React to split your app into smaller pieces. Of course, it's up to you how small you want to split it. Every list item, for example, could also be its own component, and there would be nothing wrong with that. The idea simply is to have small, manageable code files, and later, once we add more logic to the app so that we can also interact with it and we change the number of goals, for example, upon a button click and so on, we of course want to be able to manage a lot of the logic in the goal list component and not in other components. So really splitting it into components has the idea of separating concerns, of keeping your files small, focused, and manageable, which if you're working in bigger projects, is a huge win because it makes it much easier to manage and work in such bigger projects. Now, thus far, everything in our app is hard-coded though. Now, more realistic would be that, let's say, our goal list is managed here in app.js as data, and we want to render the goal list HTML items or JSX items based on that data. Now I'll manage it here in app.js simply because later I will add another component here that helps us create new goals. But for now, let's just add a normal constant here to this functional component because it is a normal JavaScript function. Of course, you can do more than just return JSX. And this constant here will have my course goals. You can name it however you want. And this will be an array. And in this array, each goal can be a JavaScript object created here with the object literal notation. Of course, you could also create your own class or constructor function and instantiate that to create such an object. Now let's say every goal has an ID, CG1 for course goal 1, and then has some text, let's say. And the text here is simply the text I have hard-coded here. Finish the course. So I'll copy that and add this here. And I'll split this across multiple lines to make it easier to read. Because I'll not just have one goal, but 3. So the IDs are CG2 and CG3, let's say. And now I will just copy all that text here into my objects here in app.js. Also that last text like this. And there I can now also get rid of that ampersand thing here. We don't need it here. We can output the text like this, and React will render it properly. So now we have the course goals array, and my idea now is that in the goal list component, these goals, that data here, should in the end be output. So it should be output dynamically in this component, in the goal list component, instead of being hard-coded. So we can remove this code here. Now that leaves us with 2 problems. Number 1, how can we output a list of data dynamically in JSX? But more important than that at the moment, how can we get that list of data, which is defined in the app component, into the goal list component? Well, let's focus on that first, because without that, we can't focus on the other problem. We can pass data from component to component with a concept called props, short for properties. We can define our own, you could say, attributes, which are these props, on our own components. So for example, here on goal list, we could say we have an items attribute or a goals attribute, totally up to you. I'll go with goals here. And that goals attribute, or prop is the common term, so this goals prop, then passes data to that component. Now for that, I don't use a string here, which I want to pass down, but instead I want to pass down my JavaScript data structure, the array here. And for that, here actually we use another special syntax in JSX. We use single opening and closing curly braces. Looks like we're creating a JavaScript object here, but we are not. If you do this inside of JSX, which I am doing here, that's JSX, then this means you wanna merge your JSX code with some JavaScript expression in the end. And here we can point at course goals. That is a valid JavaScript expression. We're just pointing at a constant. And what this in the end means is that React will pass course goals here, the value stored in this constant, in this case this array, into this place of JSX. In this case, into this prop, therefore. So goals will be a prop that holds a reference to this array now. Now, inside of goal list, we can now receive that goals prop. So let's go to goal list and see how that works. in goal list, we have a function, right? A functional component. Now this function right now doesn't get any parameters. We can change this. We can receive a props parameter here. Every function that is used as a React component, which means it returns JSX, also receives props. This is an object passed to your React functional component automatically by React. And it's an object that bundles all the props you passed to the component. So in our case, goals is the single prop we have. So here we will have an object which has a property with the name of goals that holds the value passed to that prop. So in other words, here I could console log props.goals. .goals because I named my prop goals here. If you chose a different name here, which is perfectly fine, you have to use the different name here. Now if we save that, we won't see our goals anymore at the moment. But if we open the developer tools, we see the array being logged here, and that log is coming from goal list line 6, as you see, which of course is this log here. And there we see our goals data, which means, yes, it arrives successfully inside of the goal list component. The concept of props is a super important concept in React, because this is what allows you to pass data from component A, the app component, to component B, the goal list component in this case. Now let's have a look at how we can output a list of data dynamically in JSX, because here we got a list of goals, an array of goals, and we want to output this as list items here in our unordered list.